so are all three of the judges ready? The timer? Yep. From the negative team. And let's begin. A vote for the negative team is a vote for unsustainability. A vote for the negative team is a vote for a fiscal crisis. And finally, a vote for the negative team is a vote against the average investor. In this speech, we're first of all going to be going over the disadvantages, and then finally we'll be looking at the arguments that were reiterated in the first negative rebuttal speech. I'm going to be combining a lot of their arguments because they all hinge on the same basic thoughts. So actually their two disadvantages are similar, so all of my responses to these two disadvantages can apply to both of them. My first response to their markets and economy disadvantage is that we are a tiny tax. Tiny tax. The highest rate we tax is 0.5%. This is not a large enough tax to cause any of the problems that they are stating. This is way too over-exaggerated. They themselves agreed $50 out of $10,000 is not a significant amount. Now my second response, this is specific to the costs argument, which they talked about in both of their disadvantages. They claim that costs are decreased by high-frequency trading. I have a couple of responses. My first response is no quantification. They have provided absolutely no quantification for how much high-frequency trading reduces costs. Quantification is very important. For all we know, it could be like 0.0001%. We have no idea. So this point should be discarded. Now let's talk about their efficiency argument, which was, again, under both disadvantages. My first response to this is no definition of efficiency. No definition of efficiency. They have not defined specifically what efficiency is, thus we cannot tell if it's important in today's debate round. My second response is that of the 1980s. We'll be talking about this a little bit more in my speech, but in the 1980s we had a very strong economy. We had very strong markets and we didn't have high-frequency trading. So this just proves that efficiency, costs, everything was fine in the 1980s. At the most, our plan will be reducing liquidity to the level of the 1980s. They also had no evidence that we would reduce liquidity to a harmful level. We provided specific evidence talking about how liquidity at the most would only be decreased to the level of the 1980s, which was already a very liquid amount. We have seen no evidence from the negative team that this is, or of quantification of this will actually be harmful, so for that reason we can see that this point doesn't really stand. Now, talking about, again, under both of these disadvantages, my third response to this is it's 50% of volume, not worth. 50% of volume, not worth. This is trading volume, so how many transactions we have. This doesn't mean anything about worth. 50% of the market trades are done by high-frequency traders, but this has absolutely nothing to do with the actual worth of the market. Now I'd like to bring up a piece of evidence on the volatility issue, how a financial transactions tax actually decreases volatility. They've argued that by reducing liquidity, it actually increases volatility. My response to this is this does not happen. Effectively, a financial transactions tax obviously reduces volatility. According to Dean Baker, PhD in economics from 2008, quote, if there are substantial numbers of noise traders who act based on market movements rather than an assessment of fundamentals in the market, the reduction in trading volume can actually reduce volatility, since it can prevent price swings driven by momentum rather than fundamentals, end quote. Now let me explain something real quick about high-frequency trading. High-frequency traders aren't looking into the businesses themselves. They're not looking to see where their money is going, if it's actually going to help the business, if it's going to grow over time. They're merely going off price arbitrage, saying, oh, if we buy 1,000 shares of stock, the stock will go up by a fraction of a cent, we can sell off and make a ton of money. It has nothing to do with the actual strength of the businesses. This is actually not investment. So you can tag my next response as not investment, not investment. High-frequency traders are not doing investment. Investment is fundamental analysis of the business and whether you think it's going to improve in the future. High-frequency traders don't do this. They merely are manipulating the markets with their frenzied trading strategies. So any of their evidence saying, oh, it's going to decrease investment, this is not true because high-frequency traders do not do the kind of investment that helps our markets. Now let's talk specifically, they argued that they specifically argued that costs will be passed on to middle-class investors. This was, again, under both of the disadvantages. My response to this is it's such a tiny tax. Highest rate is 0.5%. That is nothing. Now, let's talk a little bit about the argument of revenue, that we won't be generating enough revenue. Now, I'd like to point out again, as we've reiterated throughout this entire round, that we will gain our revenue. We have empirical evidence. It's happened before. According to Dean Baker, who I cited earlier, quote, it is worth noting that the UK raises equivalent of more than $30 billion a year on a tax that is only applied to stock trades, end quote. This piece of evidence illustrates exactly what we're saying. The trading will not go overseas. The UK empiric actually shows us this. They have a strong market. They have no high-frequency trading. They also gain a good amount of revenue. So we can see that this shoots down all of the issue of solvency. Now let's talk about the debt issue. They argued that taxes are worse, that we have low interest rates now, and that we don't reduce China's holdings. My first response to this is that debt is actually worse than taxes. We've reiterated a quote from Bruce Bartlett, economic advisor to President Ronald Reagan, who states that taxes are better than debt. To the low interest rates, it doesn't matter. It's a future problem. And fiscal crisis, we are happening upon a fiscal crisis. We generate approximately $2 trillion every year, and it's a net benefits case. We provide the most net benefit. So for all those reasons, I strongly urge you to stand with the affirmative team and enact our plan. Thank you. It's been a pleasure speaking for you.